Hello and welcome to this video on the not so subtle problem with using anecdotes as evidence. When arguing your position, facts and figures reign supreme, and at the very bottom of the evidence ladder are anecdotes, the last degraded bastion of a losing position. The weakness of this line of evidence is one reason why peddlers of woo and pseudoscience rely on it. Anecdotes are personal accounts or testimony of an experience, and often relate to a treatment. Think of anecdotes as similar to product reviews. A good example are claims of paranormal experiences. Stories of personal experience with paranormal or supernatural events that have little scientific value. Seeing lights, hearing voices, or experiencing alien probes. If others cannot experience the same thing under the same conditions, then there will be no way to verify, measure, or test it. These are often clear-cut claims that deny any other possible answer or reason, and as a human, we are more likely to believe personal stories from another individual. This is commonly seen with pyramid schemes, or the more readily accepted term, multi-level marketing. The company or business representatives do not make a claim themselves, often due to legal restrictions. Instead, they rely on customers or similar to make claims for the efficacy of the product, which is free of the same legal limitations. These are supposed to be unique to each individual, and will often be seen in support of supplements and unapproved medical treatments. An anecdote is similar to the lived experience argument, in which a person's personal account of events or experiences is able to supersede a more general and universal rule. The personal aspect makes an argument against it become a question of the opponent's personal self and life. Anecdotes work in a similar way. If you question the anecdote, you are questioning the experience of the person, which is like calling them a liar. Unfortunately, one instance or perceived instance of the rule not applying does not by necessity break the underlying argument. It does not counter the wider model, such as population studies, clinical trials, and experiments. Anecdotes are not evidence. They cannot be tested, and are from a single source, and as a result, liable to a statistical sampling error. The problem with this is that the claim is personal. This is separate and distinct from a more universal model. Take the vitamin C example. Person A can take vitamin C and other supplements to get better. They tell their friends that vitamin C cured their cold and not the cocktail of supplements and rest they took. Some of their friends try it as a consequence, and 1 in 10 of them get better by random chance. This creates 2 people who repeat the anecdote. Now there are possibly 2 people in 20 who get better. This trend does not continue indefinitely, and eventually a small number of people will get better when taking vitamin C. They continue to speak of its value with anecdotes of their recovery, but the reliable model of its efficacy simply does not exist. Their recovery is not because of supplements, rather other factors which affect their health and recovery. This is also why the other 9 people did not get better. Their circumstances or vitamin C intake were unrelated to whether they got sick or they got well. In short, anecdotes are unreliable because selective thinking and self-deception are significant factors in it. Somebody does not go around asking random people for their thoughts on various things, but those who provide anecdotes select themselves as volunteers. They report what they feel is pertinent or factual in the situation. This will often be based on the underlying assumption that whatever they're writing or speaking about is the cause of any effect. Compare this with the conduct and design of good research. An experiment that uses random participants, control groups, and appropriately couched questions or problems. This gives a clear line of evidence leading to a conclusion. An anecdote reaches its conclusion regardless of the evidence. Vitamin C people will claim that they feel better after consuming it, that they recovered from the cold or flu because of vitamin C. As described previously, this is simply untrue, but an anecdote makes it seem otherwise. The people who get better are vocal and reiterate their experience, and they do so often. Meanwhile, those who do not get better are not vocal and rarely contradict the other's argument. The problem with this line of evidence is that we have empirical clinical evidence from controlled trials, and they clearly contradict the anecdotes. This is where anecdotes come into one of their major barriers. They are unable to supersede the evidence with their individual samples, when you have much larger, much more substantive, and consistent bodies of evidence. This is commonly seen in vaccines cause autism claims. The argument goes somewhere along the lines of, my child or my brother's wife's sister's child was given a vaccine, and somewhere between a few hours and a few months later, they started to behave differently, and later after that were diagnosed with autism. This is based on the selective recollection of a negative event, which is generally a stronger memory that lasts longer. This obviously means that when someone speaks to their experience of it, they will remember it one particular way with particular emotions attached to it. This is a collection of things, including confirmation bias and reporting bias. Confirmation bias being where the anecdote contains only evidence you've remembered that supports your conclusion. Reporting bias is very similar, in which you only include elements of your anecdote that support your conclusion. Unfortunately, the opposite can also be true. This is why anecdotes are a problem. They are too easily manipulated by the person making them. Finally, anecdotes are full of misleading or precarious language that hedges the claim in such a way that even if proven false, it is still a valid claim of a self-reported experience. This can be that a specific person reports that this has happened, or that only one person experienced a particular outcome and that they want to share their story. Companies will often use it as a means of passing the buck on to someone if they've been found out. This can be seen through the use of technical terms, trademark names, and more. Take the raft of dihydrogen monoxide pranks as an example. The first of which, this involved claims of dihydrogen monoxide contamination of a university campus. The facts about this substance are clear and can cause metal corrosion and is used in many other toxic substances and even more terrible things, but by using the technical name of water, it sounded far more terrifying. Another example claimed that there was far too much hydrogen in the town's water supply, and another one had that there was dihydrogen monoxide contamination of the water supply. Both of these components are what should be there. The problem with anecdotes like that is that there is just enough truth in these claims that it makes them believable. Now, you may reasonably think that if enough people have a similar story, it begins to count as evidence. The problem with this is that these are not randomly selected people giving a story, but self-selected individuals. They will have chosen to report their particular anecdote because of a strong emotion attached to this result. This will generally be either very positive or very negative, which means you are not getting a controlled sample. The question you must ask is who vets the anecdote when you see this sort of thing. You will often find there is a bias in what anecdotes you see if a commercial interest is behind the report. In the worst case scenario, an anecdote is brushed off by companies, groups, or even influential individuals as an error, or it is simply deleted and made to go away. This is one way they can control what you see and hear reported about their products. The inherent instability, unreliability, and often deliberately skewed content of an anecdote is only made worse by the poor memory humans have, and the way it favors, ignores, or distorts memory of certain events. This makes recollections of an event for a personal anecdote even worse. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it useful or interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions below.